It's time to get nerdy, y'all.
A little bit of gaming history for you.
Something relevant in gaming and discuss our opinions on it.
Should we kick it out of here, or should we kick-start it?
This is the part where you, the listeners, try to stump the hosts.
I'm not a lawyer. I just play one on a podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, lads and lasses of all ages, welcome to the show. It is Friday, April the 4th, 2025, and it is time to get nerdy. Welcome to episode 337 of Two Nerds in a Pod, the nerdiest gaming podcast in the multiverse. I am one of your co-hosts, Mac, and I am joined by my co-host, Mr. Nice Guy 425, who actually is sitting right next to me because we're in the same spot.
We're in the same spot in my basement, which is how we used to do things back in the day. Feeling very nostalgic.
I know, right? It's like old times. Reunited and it feels so good.
Copyright strike.
Yeah. Man, that was a good run while it lasted. But yeah, so we're here. We're here for the Midwest Gaming Classic. But obviously, the hits keep coming, the news keeps coming, and of course what's on everybody's mind right now is Nintendo Switch 2. So we thought we would bring you a special episode dedicated almost entirely to what we know, what we don't know, and, well, you know, some of the classic, what these two nerds think about the Nintendo Switch 2. But with no further ado, let's get into it, yeah?
Yeah, let's get into it, man. And so this is one episode where we actually did a good amount of prep in advance. A lot of times we prepare separately and then get thoughts off the cuff. There's a few Nintendo Switch 2 related topics that we want to hit. Mac, the first one that I think we should talk about is the price.
Yeah.
Announced to be $449. I think a lot of us were hoping and thinking it would be $399. But I also want to mention that the games are looking like they may be more expensive. Mario Kart looking like it'll be $70 or $80. However, if you get the Switch 2 bundle with Mario Kart, ends up being $499. So you're effectively paying $50 for a digital copy. What are your thoughts on the price point? Will it deter consumers? What does it look like for you as someone who may be interested?
Okay, so let me start by saying that we've had a few different things with respect to pricing over the years, because Nintendo's been in the game for a while, and so we've seen plenty of different prices.
Right.
For example, in 1985, when the NES came out, it was $179.
For the NES?
Yes, for the NES.
Yeah.
Which I keep on my phone because I'm a huge nerd, an inflation calculator.
Okay.
And so this is mostly to talk to certain people of a certain vintage. But if you run that through an inflation calculator, that's $525 in today's dollars.
Okay.
So it's not, objectively, it's not the most expensive of the consoles that Nintendo has put out there. Now, you can take some issue with the methodology behind the inflation. Is it good? But I think it gets you kind of close. So it's not the most expensive console that Nintendo has done, even for just the baseline of $450. So I think it's worth keeping that in mind. Also, I think it's worth keeping in mind what's the baseline today. Now, I didn't buy an Xbox Series X. I didn't buy a PlayStation 5 or whatever we're up to now. What were those things running for when you bought them?
Yeah, they were more. So I think I paid, $499 for the PlayStation 5, and that would have been 2020. And for the Xbox that I have, I believe it was the same price, and that would have been maybe a year or two later, the Series X. So that's a valid point. The one thing that I'll say where I slightly disagree with you when it comes to using inflation calculators is the fact that when the NES came out, what were the other options for consumers? And you kind of just alluded to this in the fact that there is an Xbox, there is a PlayStation, gaming PCs are much more prevalent, there's all kinds of handhelds in the form of the Steam Deck, nostalgic stuff in the Analog Pocket and others. So, you know, I think that it's not quite an apples to apples comparison, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah. So, and I also think it's fair for us to talk about, do we think, and we're going to get there on specs, do we think that the specifications that we're getting justify the high price tag that we're having? But I do just kind of want to level set there and be like, you know, if you're saying, oh, this is the most expensive Nintendo console, it's important to be like, not really.
Yeah, that's fair. But what would you say about the games specifically? $70, $80. We have seen $70 games as of late. Not as much from Nintendo. I do believe Tears of the Kingdom was that price. But what do you think about this and the potential precedent that it might set, having a Mario Kart come out at this price?
Well, before I answer that question, I'm also going to do my inflation calculator again.
Okay.
One of my favorite games of all time, Mega Man 2. Obviously, you guys know it. That was released in '88. It was $50, which is $135 in today's bucks.
Wow.
So inflation adjusted, and again, we can go back and forth about whether or not that's the metric, but it's pretty close. So also the NES cartridges were more expensive at the time than what we're doing here. The landscape, and what are we paying for most video games? And in the situation where we've got multiple places to go, I'm sorry, unfortunately, there's only one place we can go for Elden Ring, right?
No, you can go a lot of places. I know that was a rhetorical question,
Yeah.
but there's a lot of places. In fact, I believe it's coming to the Switch, too.
Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, do you want to pay $70, $80 for that? But more importantly, to the actual question you asked, I will stay on topic. I promise. I'm going to try.
Okay.
But, to the question you actually asked about whether or not, that sets precedent, I think any of the publishers would love to charge more money and have that $90 price point, what we call justified, more rationalized, more mainstream.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So I am a little bit concerned for my wallet and what that's going to do for my future gaming.
Yeah, I don't like it. Not that Mario Kart is a kiddie game. Like, I'm not someone who hates on Nintendo. I grew up on Nintendo. I was a Nintendo kid. But I don't like the idea of an $80 game. And I'll just leave it at that. I don't think anyone does, except for the people who are getting paid off of it. So we'll see what happens there. Mac, we got a lot of topics. Is there one that you want to hit next? We can talk about games. We can talk about controllers. We can talk about the screen. What do you want to hit next, man?
Gosh, well, let's do all of it, but let's talk some of the games that we know. What do we know? We know we're getting
So
Elden Ring.
we know we're getting Elden Ring. We know that we're getting a new Mario Kart World, which potentially has both in-race and out-of-race content for people to do.
Are we getting Half-Life 3?
We are not yet. I mean,
Okay.
I'd like to keep my fingers crossed.
Sure.
I somehow I don't think that's coming to Nintendo when it does, but I could be wrong. Valve might want to do that. We're getting a Donkey Kong 3D game. I already forgot the name of it, but some are saying that is basically the Mario Odyssey sequel, as opposed to getting a Mario 3D game. And then another one that's big is Silksong.
I feel like I've been burned before.
Yeah.
What evidence do we have that Silksong is there? Is this hopes and dreams? Is this a 5-second flash? What are we talking about?
No, they basically said 2025 release date. And they showed some additional footage, like 3 or 4 seconds of footage.
Okay.
But they actually said 2025 release date, which is exciting to me. I know you've played Hollow Knight. Are you excited for the sequel?
Very much so. I mean, obviously, we don't know what we don't know, and we don't know if this is going to keep up to the quality level that Team Cherry established in the first Hollow Knight. But if it is going to be fantastic. I love Hornet.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think that I have no doubts about the quality, simply because it has been 8 years, and they showed it to us the first time, I think, 6 years ago. I think that they let this marinate for a long time. They let this cook for a long time. So I can't believe that they're now finally having it come out and that it's going to be bad. There have been times when that happens. Cyberpunk 2077, No Man's Sky. There's been games that cooked for a long time and still came out raw and doughy, but I don't think that's the case here. And I want to do a replay of Hollow Knight, honestly. This is the game that I'm the most hyped for, even though it will not be a Switch exclusive. Is it day one purchase for you?
Or for Silksong?
Yeah, not necessarily on Switch 2, but just in general.
Probably.
Yeah.
Now, I seem to recall that Hollow Knight, while we're talking about pricing and things like that, Hollow Knight came out for around $20, $25?
No, I believe 15.
15. Do you think we're going to be so lucky for our Switch friends, or do you think it's going to launch at that 80?
Oh, I think there's no way it launches at 80, but I honestly wouldn't be surprised if they did a $30 Silksong game. As long as people have been waiting, it is now 8 years later. We got a really, really good game for $15 in Hollow Knight, more than we deserved in terms of price to value. I think that they charge $30 for this and that people happily pay for it.
Yeah, I will happily pay $30 for this. I will even more happily pay $15, but, let's not get crazy. Now, I forget, is there any sort of... I know that I seem to recall Team Cherry doing something special for their Kickstarter backers with respect to Hollow Knight or Silksong. Are Kickstarter backers getting like Silksong for free or something?
I'll be honest, I don't know.
Okay.
I think that there was some, in fact, I know there was some DLC for Hollow Knight that was added. I feel like that was free for everybody. You might be thinking of, there's been a lot of games where this has happened. I know it happened with Shovel Knight, where the backers got the 2 sequel games for free. I don't know if it happened with Hollow Knight, to be honest. And I don't think they're giving out Silksong for free. I think that if you kickstarted it, that's great, but I think you're paying for Silksong.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Now, the other big game, Mac, before we move on, there's a lot of games that we know are coming. One that we know is coming, but we don't know the release date for, is Metroid Prime 4. I saw the footage. It looks awesome. Did you play the original 3, and are you excited for this?
So I actually did not, but I found a copy of the Metroid Prime trilogy for the Nintendo Wii, bought it, I have it at home, and it's on the list. It's in the queue.
Yeah.
So I look forward to trying it, and hopefully I can get through all 3 of those before I have the opportunity to play somebody else's Nintendo Switch 2 in order to play Metroid Prime 4. Spoilers.
Yeah, you're going to have... Spoiler alert, Mac is already planning another trip out here, or one for me to come out there and bring my Switch, which will be awesome. So I'll say this. As far as Metroid goes, it has never been S tier for me. I really like Metroid, but I like it in the 2D Metroid format. I like the traditional Metroidvania, and the times that I've tried to get into the 3D version, I've never been able to. This might change on the Switch too. We'll see.
So I've got some questions for you about the specifications and the things that we know. Of the stuff that we know at the announcement, what thing took you the most by surprise?
I would say the thing that took me most by surprise is the screen. Because the screen sounds like it's going to be very nice, but we had a Switch, and then we had a Switch OLED. And I seem to remember saying in a past episode, there's probably a small chance that they release this new one without an OLED screen. And they did it. Now, the specs of the new screen, Mac, 1080p, 120 Hz, LCD, no OLED in sight. I feel like this is a step backwards, and I can tell you more why, but I'm curious your thoughts. Does that matter to you?
So I'm rocking one of the early Steam Decks, one of the ones without the LED screen. I don't know as it has impacted me that much. So while I don't see this as a deal breaker, I do know where you're coming from, where you're like, oh, hey, this is a step backward in quality, a step downward.
Yeah, and I can't really think of like a real world application or a real world analogy to compare. But using the Steam Deck as an example, they released the Steam Deck, and then as a mid-gen upgrade, if you will, they released the Steam Deck OLED. Nintendo did the same thing. They released the Switch, and then years later, they released the Switch OLED. To me, it's a huge step backwards. And some might make the argument, well, just play your Switch docked. No, the whole point of it is that it's a hybrid. I'm 100% sure, I'm 99% sure the reason they did this was to keep costs down at launch. To say, hey, if we put in a cheaper screen that's still really awesome, we'll be okay. I know the PlayStation Portal doesn't have an OLED screen. There's other things that don't. But to me, this is a miss by Nintendo. Come out with an OLED day one, and then when you want to do your mid-gen refresh, make it skinnier, make the battery life better, make the screen bigger, get rid of a bezel, add some additional memory, but don't go cheap on the beginning just to keep the price down. I disagree with that a lot.
Well, how do you feel about talking about some upgrade stuff now?
Yeah, let's do it.
So one of the things that's noteworthy is that we know that the Switch 2 is going to come with, 256 gigs?
Of memory? Excuse me, of hard drive?
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, also you're going to have the option of using some memory expansion, right? With a micro SD, hang on, I got it here in my notes, a micro SD Express card, which you'll be happy to know that as of this record, yesterday, the first, and as far as I'm aware, only 1 terabyte option for a micro
Nice.
SD express card dropped. Lex Pro, yeah, that's
Yeah.
it. Those guys launched that yesterday. Suspicious timing. It is already sold out, obviously, but
Right.
for a mere $200, you can have 1 terabyte of Nintendo Switch 2 compatible expansion stuff. That's a bit much.
In terms of what? In terms of price?
In
or
terms of price, don't you think?
Yeah, it's 200. You said.
Yeah, 200 for 1 terabyte.
That's wild. I think that a lot of people would have probably been willing to pay more money for more hard drive space included. There's been times where we've seen consoles that come out in 2 iterations. One has, 500 gigabytes, one has 1 terabyte.
Steam Deck had 3 different options.
Yeah, and I almost wish that Nintendo would have gone that route and said, hey, if you just want to play, retro games on here for whatever reason and you want to switch to, here's the version that has way, way less hard drive space. But instead, they just came out with 1 baseline, and then you have to go buy more. And what's interesting is Nintendo doesn't have their own proprietary memory stick that they're profiting on. So to me, this is another attempt by them to keep costs down. Less memory means that it's cheaper on the front end. But I almost think that as a business person, if it was me as a businessman, I would have said, let's come up with some proprietary storage that we can then profit off of. That's so weird to me.
Yeah, we need to go back to the Sony memory sticks.
Right.
Like we talked about last episode, y'all.
Yeah.
Memory cards, 2 episodes in a row. Who'd have thunk? Nintendo, you're the gift that keeps on giving. So,
Mac, I got a question for you, though. What do you think about this, 256 gigabytes, given the size of games today? Like, if you were to buy a Switch, is that enough for you?
No.
And what you do, Mega Man 2 all day?
I mean, yeah, I might do Mega Man 2 all day, but I'm going to try some other things.
Right.
And the only thing that video games do in size is go up, increase.
Right.
Very rare is it that we find even a seemingly simple style game have an install size of less than a gigabyte.
Yeah.
And I don't know what Elden Ring is install size, but I'm willing to bet it's more than 50 gigs.
I would bet that too. It'll be interesting to see what it is on the Switch, and if it ends up being or on the Switch 2, and if it ends up being a watered down version, in terms of graphics, in terms of performance and whatnot. But yeah, I agree with you. Like, I just don't understand how 256 gigabytes is reasonable, especially when we consider that the lifespan of the Switch, the original, was 8 years, right? 2017 till June of this year. In 8 years, you're definitely filling that up and you're needing more space, even if you're deleting stuff.
Yeah. While you were talking, I did check, and with the DLC Shadow of the Erd Tree, Elden Ring sits at 60 gigabytes. So
Okay.
there's more than that's a fifth of your space. And as always, 256 gigabytes. That's how much space there is, air quotes. But the system is always going to take some chunk of memory, and usually it takes more than you think. And then there is usually some amount of stuff that is blocked off for future system updates
100%.
as well. So you're probably only going to get somewhere close to the 225 of usable space. So yeah, keep your eyes open for those Lexan memory cards or wherever else, because you're gonna need them.
100%.
But yeah, no, it's way too small, especially with the size of video games and how they're just getting bigger.
Nice. Well, I have one more thing I want to ask you about, and I was watching earlier today a video of the new Joy-Cons that are coming. That shows that they're magnetic, which is different. Before, you kind of had to slide them in. Now they pop in with the magnet, and there's a button on the back that you press to release. Additionally, it can be used as a mouse. If you turn it on its side and kind of put it down on your desk, you can use it in a different way functionally. This almost reminds me of the Wii, where the controllers could be used with motion in addition to being connected. What do you think about Nintendo going back this way, and do you think it's more gimmicky, or do you think that it'll have a lot of applications that actually make it valuable?
So I think it's probably going to be less gimmicky than, say, the HD vibration from the Switch's Joy-Cons from the
Right.
first round around. Because I don't know. Did that really add anything, the HD vibration?
Not to me, not in my opinion. No.
Yeah. I think much less gimmicky, especially because mouse and keyboard is a pretty reasonable medium through which to experience video games. Lots of things like RTSs benefit from that, but also it's all going to be in the implementation. But I can see the mouse option being a very good option for increasing compatibility across games.
Yeah, it's interesting. When I first saw that, my mind immediately went back to the Super Nintendo and Super Mario Paint, how you could use a mouse and it had that fly swatter game. So it'll be interesting to see if they come out with something retro like that or something new that implements that functionality. Concerning the magnets, I don't know. I guess that is an issue for me.
Okay.
Magnets and electronics generally don't mix.
Lom. We have not stored data on magnetic medium for at least a decade. So
Okay.
it's fine. We don't have to worry about the hard drives anymore.
Right, but I mean, I still see a lot of potential for problems here.
Well, as a man
Joy-Cons-
who has
yeah,
children,
exactly.
Tell me more. What are the things you see?
Joy-Cons getting dropped, Joy-Cons being used with other things that are magnetic, being put on the, I don't think them being
Refrigerator?
on the refrigerator would be a problem, but yeah, just a lot of experimentation. Now, ultimately, they could say, well, that's on you as the consumer to control your kids, but I still just think the magnet thing is a weird way of doing it. Like, could we have cut costs back of the Joy-Cons if we simply came out with a Joy-Con 2 with improved functionality but that attaches the same way? I don't see the benefit of a magnetic attachment here. Do you?
I don't know. One of the things that's very interesting to me is that in the Switch 2, there is a rather pronounced, it looks almost like a PCB wafer that comes off of the side of the console into which you plug. Now,
Yeah.
I understand that you can't really do the slide click down if you're going to have it connect that way. But I see that as a point, as a failure point, as an area where things get broken off.
Yeah.
And I don't know how easy that is going to be from a repairability side of things to repair. I don't know how expensive it's going to be. I don't know, but I guarantee you somebody's going to flex that. And magnets are just not going to be enough to stop the flexing from happening there and snapping those. That's what I see as a big failure point, and I think the magnets are going to do us dirty in that respect because I just don't see it locking it in. But then again, I haven't had hands-on, so maybe I'm crazy.
Well, the thing too is, I'd imagine that from a quality control perspective, it's hard to test a magnet's durability other than simply using science, right? And using formulas.
Science!
Right? Which is great. Calculate how long you think the life of a magnet's going to be, but in the implementation, is the daily use, is the whatever, like is the heat that comes off of the console, like all of these other variables, is it going to ruin the lifetime of the magnet? And Mac, one of the biggest issues that I know, speaking for myself, and I may be speaking for you, with gaming is the act and the idea of preservation. So in 10 years, are Switch 2 Joy-Cons going to be $500 because they are so hard to find?
There will always be a Mad Catz option available for 20.
Yeah, that's right. So, I mean, or is someone going to have to create their own proprietary version to make sure that the Nintendo Switch 2 can continue to be played? These are questions that I hope Nintendo has thought about. I can go buy a Super Nintendo controller. It's never hard to find one because they're durable. The N64 ones, not as much. You got to get them repaired or get that little joystick fixed. And I don't think that they thought about that at the time. So I hope they learned from that mistake and that they know that this controller is going to last for a long time.
Well said. Well, on the subject of preservation, let's hop to what I think is probably going to be one of the more hot topic ones for us. And not in the sense that it involves Jack Skellington. But the hot topic is about the preservation, is about the games specifically. And two things. One, we learned that we don't know what the price point's going to be for sure, but we learned that some of these games from the original Switch are going to have a upgrade price that you will pay to get sort of the bump up in resolution or whatever in order to have it play well or play better on the Switch 2. And that sounds kind of like maybe HD upscaling, I don't know, but there will be a price difference for you to pay to unlock that improvement for the Switch 2, although I think your old cartridges will just play as is plugged into the Switch 2. Is that your understanding too?
That's my understanding. I was reading somewhere that there's maybe 1 or 2 cartridges that won't work because they use some type of peripheral that won't be compatible. Yeah, that's all I really know.
Okay. We don't have details on those specs yet, but there is something that we do have details on, and that is that quite a few. I mean, we don't know how many, but there are at least some games for which paying the extra money to get the physical, air quotes, version of the cartridge is in fact not going to give you game data. As a matter of fact, on one of the FAQ pages for Nintendo, and I'm gonna quote the line directly here because I grabbed a screenshot, the game itself isn't included on the game key card, so you'll have to download it before you can play. And this has me concerned for a variety of reasons, not least of which because as people who are interested in preservation, if we never have the data to begin with, what even are we doing?
Yeah, it's tough. I guess the closest thing I could say, just in an attempt to play devil's advocate and look at both sides, is that on the Steam Deck you can download stuff, but you can't always access it unless you have an internet connection, right? Some of the games that you have, I think like maybe a Red Dead Redemption 2 and others, and I'm not talking about strictly online play. I'm talking about the requirement to connect to servers every time you want to play a single-player game. That kind of stuff bugs me. But to get more direct to your point about the game data not being on the cartridge, that's what you said? Mm-hmm. It's ridiculous. Well, then why would I even buy a physical game? If it's about preservation, if it's about longevity, I would buy digital every single time with that 256 gigabytes of space that they've given.
And I have been on record many times aiming the cannon squarely at Nintendo and saying, hey, y'all are engaging in what I think are practices that are harmful to the consumer. And this is one of them. I think they are trying everything to push us as customers into accepting never having any of the data really in a fixable place so that they can sell it to us again and again and again 4, 5, 6 times, however many. And I think this is just another outflow of it, another little, if we wake up in the morning and the fence is, 5 inches over the property line, and we just lose more ground. To quote Jean-Luc Picard, the line must be drawn here, this far, no further. Although I would have drawn that line a lot earlier. But that's kind of the feel. I feel like this is just the slow encroaching of let's just keep pushing it. When the people over at Xbox were like, oh, hey, look, if you want physical games, then we've got a product for you. It's called the Xbox 360.
Right.
People pushed back hard on that, and they walked it back. And I feel like this is now now Nintendo is doing the Raptors. They're testing the fences, looking for weaknesses. They'd remember. That's my best, Australian, dino wrangler voice.
Right. No, I agree. And, as someone who still goes out and gets physical Game Boy cartridges because they're fun to have, the idea that the game data's not on there, it's not going to bother everyone, but it bothers me.
Yeah. And it bothers me too. And I feel like I've seen a lot of outrage. It's only been a couple of days, but I feel like I've seen a lot of people who were frustrated by the price points. And far be it from me to tell you what to be outraged about, but I think this is the bigger thing that you should be like, now hold on a second there. Is that.
Well, Mac, I have one last question for you. Did we cover all the topics we had talked about covering?
I believe so, my good man. That's all the things that I had to talk about.
Nice. So my last question for you and for the people listening at home, send us a message, let us know. On a scale, should we use the Two Nerds scale? On a scale of 1 to 5, how excited are you for the Nintendo Switch 2? 5 being super excited, day one purchase, and everything below that being where you feel you land.
Okay, on the Two Nerds 1 to 5 scale, I would say 2. Yeah, I am definitely not picking this up day one. I may not even ever pick it up because I feel like it's something I can do without. And thankfully, I get by with a little help from my friends who sometimes pick them up. So yeah, 2 for me.
Yeah, so I'm a 3. Like I was an early adopter of the Nintendo Switch. I bought it day one.
He waited in line,
did all that stuff. Got one. Have a picture of my 2 sons, who were the only ones really playing video games at the time, holding the Switch box. For this one, it's a 3 for me. I live in Wisconsin, and June 5th, summertime, right? Mm-hmm. Not saying I'm not playing video games, but I'm really not that interested during one of the few months of the year where it's golf time, it's park time, it's swimming time, to be picking up a new game console. As much as I love video games, like I'm going to be doing other things. Even if I lived in Florida or California or Arizona or somewhere warm, the value proposition of this just isn't enough for me to rush out and buy it day one. I actually feel like Nintendo probably should have done a holiday release, but they're probably trying to get as many sales in as possible before the end of the fiscal year next March, so they launched it mid-year. That's probably a big part of it. Mm-hmm. I was talking with one of my friends who lives in my neighborhood, and he said, I just got to know more about this before I buy it. Like, I need to know exactly what the launch titles are, exactly what makes it exciting, and he's a fellow multi-console owner in his home. For those of us who are in that situation, this one just doesn't seem like an immediate add to the collection.
Yeah, and I went out to my neighbors, the cows, and they had the following to say. Moo. So I think we've really gauged with our fingers on the pulse of what's going on in video gaming.
I lied, though. I got one more question. Do you think this should have been a holiday release rather than a summer release?
Man, I have such warmth in my heart for holiday releases, but I will say that I like the idea of being able to get it in the summer, just because, that gives me plenty of time to secure one if I were going to do it, because we know that Nintendo struggles with supplying the amount of units that they darn well know people are asking for, but they have trouble supplying that. So, I think 6 months gives you a chance to secure one in order for you to give that to somebody for the holidays.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, and even a November release to me might have made more sense than releasing it now. I haven't heard anyone be super excited for this. And we could go on and on, Mac. We could talk about, should they have done a Switch 2 or should they have done something completely different? I feel like the Switch hit the sweet spot of handheld home console hybrid. So I get why they did it this way. And I don't think that it would have made sense to come up with a completely new random console. But I just feel like the release date and the specs and the launch titles just aren't enough to get me super excited. For me, it's a 3 on the Two Nerds scale.
Yeah. And for all these reasons and more, a 2 for me.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, cool.
Yeah.
You want to take us home, man?
Absolutely. Hey, everybody, thanks for coming out. I know this is a little bit shorter of an episode, and also, because of the traveling that I'm doing, is going to be up, it's going to take a little bit to get up. But we appreciate you tuning in for this episode. And if you want to catch us live, often from our separate sides of the United States, 7 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Central, Mondays at twitch.tv/2nerdsinapod, where you can catch us being nerdy, talking about video games, and if you want, you can try stumping us with your nerdy trivia. So, be excellent to each other, and until we see you next, keep it nerdy.
See ya.